Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be doing a tournament report on my top 16 run with Dragapult Charizard. So let's get right into it. This is the list that I played to Portland Regionals. It's not a super crazy Dragapult Charizard list, but has a few notable inclusions. The number one inclusion really is the inclusion of the Monkey Dory with the 4 copies of Luminous. This is popularized by the Japan Champions League winning list that played 6 Fires and 3 Luminous, but I've made the adjustment to go for the full 4 copies of Luminous with Monkey Dory, and this is very impactful. First and foremost, having 9 energies in your deck is very important when you're going into any Bidoof war against a Gardevoir or a Dragapult deck. You're able to get consistent attachments. You're able to set up your Dragapults a little bit quicker in the mirror than like a Dragapult Dusk Noir that plays 6 to 7 energies, and it really does make a huge difference when you're looking to establish quickly. Also get your Monkey Dory in play, the 5 fire energies of course to consistently Infernal Rain. And the rest of the list is relatively standard. I got the 3 copies of Arven over the 4 copies of Arven, so a little bit less reliant on the TM Evo, but still a very significant part of the deck. The 2 copies of Research and Brock Scouting, just making sure that we have plenty of playability under item lock. The 100 HP copy of Charmeleon, actually previously played the 90 HP version, but the 100 HP version is very important into the End Zoroark matchup because it will survive End Maniten's Flame Body Cannon. That was something that I struggled with a lot in Milwaukee, where I also played Dragapult Charizard, so making the adjustment there just to make sure that I have that extra percentage point. So hopping into the tournament run, had a very interesting matchup spread, hitting 4 Gardevoirs over the course of the day, 2 Dragapults, actually 3 Dragapults, one with a Pidgeot and 2 straight Dragapults, and then an array of different archetypes. So starting round 1, I played against Ian. Ian is a friend that I have played against before at a regional as well, actually, and congrats to Ian on an 8-2-2 finish, also very strong. Ian was playing the Flareon Sylveon deck, which is a interesting matchup, but very good matchup for Dragapult Charizard. So this match was a little bit unfortunate for Ian, but typically how this one ends up playing out is that they want to Angelite you, but because we have both the Dragapult and the Charizard line in our deck, it really allows us to establish board states that are quite difficult for the other player to deal with. Because even if they're Angeliting, we're still left with multiple Charmanders and Dreepies in play. Typically for a straight Dragapult or Dragapult Dusknoir deck, if you prize even 1 Dreepy, you're left with not very many attackers to work with. But in the case of Dragapult Charizard, we don't have this issue, and additionally, Charizard is actually very strong into this deck because Dragapult is weak to Clefairy and weak to Sylveon, but Charizard has 330 HP and is not weak to any attackers that the Flareon Sylveon deck has. So as soon as they take 3 prizes, the Sylveon gets 1 shot by Charizard, the rest of their deck gets 1 shot by Charizard, and the maximum amount of damage that this deck can do is 310 with the copy of Kieran, which actually looks like Ian didn't play the copy of Kieran, but Kieran plus Carnelian will do 310, which is not enough to knock out Charizard. So typically in this one you look to lead with the Bidoof, and then you get this really wide board state. It's very difficult for them to overcome all of the pressure. In this one against Ian, had a really tough time getting Sylveon out in the first game, wasn't really able to establish any board and slow me down, so I was really just able to set up a bunch of attackers, run through. Even if an Angelite theoretically came, I had lots of Dracloaks and things in play where it wouldn't have been super detrimental. Game 2 was a little bit closer, but got into an endgame board state where Ian eventually has to take prize cards in order to win the game. And I was able to find Charizard after that happened, and from there was really just running through with the Charizard. So that was round 1. Again, congrats for the top 64 finish. Into my round 2. Let's go pull that back up. I played against Eddie. Eddie was a fantastic opponent. Really enjoyed playing against Eddie. Was playing the Gardevoir deck. I believe it was the Brent 60. Very close. Brent 59 has the 3rd rare candy over the Professor Turo. So this version of the Gardevoir deck is fairly favored for Dragapult Charizard. this version of the deck does rely on that Bidoof and Cleffa a little bit more heavily than the TM Evo version of the Guardy. So you oftentimes will have access to a 2-prize Phantom Dive to initiate the prize trade, which is very, very helpful. Additionally, they also are a little bit weaker under Bidoof. Our game plan here is really just to lead with our own Bidoof. If they're playing this version of Guardy, and try to slow them down. If we're able to get a Phantom Dive to knock out Curlia plus Rowlets, we will typically win. You can normally get that with either Monkey Dory's Adrenabrain or Hawlucha to soften up a Rowlets, where you end up bossing up a Curlia and then damaging a Rowlets with the either Flying Entry or Adrenabrain to take a double knockout. And then, of course, if that doesn't work, we still have our reliable Charizard EX, which is very, very annoying for Gardevoir, as it one-shots Gardevoir EX, and of course it is not a dragon type, so Clefairy does not hit for weakness on it. So we have a plethora of different options. In this match specifically, Eddie, I think, drew 14, 16 cards and couldn't find Candy Guardy in our first game. So I pretty much took a 4-prize lead, and Eddie scooped it up, wasn't really able to make anything happen. The second game was a little bit closer, but also very difficult for them to get going. There's a variety of different threats going on. Finding the lines oftentimes as the Gardevoir player can be quite difficult, and I believe I hit boss on one turn to really just take out the Gardevoir EX and put Eddie in a pretty difficult spot. Oftentimes what this matchup can come down to for the Charizard Dragapult player is finding boss on key turns. I mentioned taking out Curlia plus Rowlets. Finding a boss is very important for that, but also just finding boss to take out Gardevoir EX on key turns is very, very impactful as well. Typically, the Gardevoir player has to make another Gardevoir after the first one gets KO'd, just simply to fuel the Adrenabrain. So if you don't have another Gardevoir, you can't do that. So typically you're going to see that players, even if their Gardevoir gets knocked out, they have to make a second one. So that makes it very, very nice if you're able to chain boss's orders. So at this point we are 2-0, and then going into round 3, we played against Jose, who is playing Raging Bolt. It's a pretty standard deck list, I believe. I don't know, it actually had the Glass Trumpet and the Energy Switch. I didn't see the Glass Trumpet in our games. I think I did see the Energy Switch. This one was an interesting game, but I did get pretty fortunate. So Jose, both games, was able to get this ideal turn 1 that Raging Bolt is looking for, which is typically going to be getting this baby Raging Bolt in the active with an energy, probably having a Terra in play, and then having hopefully 1 or 2 Hoot Hoots in addition, and then depending on how they got in the active, maybe they had to use Latias to get in. So Jose was able to establish this turn 1 board state, which is very, very strong, but I got into pretty strong positions myself. I believe game 1 I was able to get the TM Evo off, which is very powerful, allowing myself to get 2 Dracloaks into play immediately. Puts him in a pretty difficult spot where has to, kind of poke off one of these Dracloaks and avoid some things, right? So on this turn, I can find like Candy Dragapult Hawlucha and take 2 prizes, and then I'm immediately winning the prize trade. In this one, I actually did go 2 prizes down, which is, typically pretty dangerous, right? If you go to 2 prizes down and you want to go 2-2-2 to win the prize trade, you need to force them to whiff a KO, and so that's kind of what I played into, where on the final turn of the game, I got into a position where I was on 2 prize cards, or sorry, I was on 4 prize cards. He was on 2 prize cards. He had the Fezandipity in play, and then I was able to get something like this, but didn't have any Hoot Hoots in play. So I was able to get the Phantom Dive plus Iono to 2, get the Fezandipity trapped in the active. There was no Latias in play either at this point, which meant that it was pretty difficult to move the Fezandipity. Needs to get 5 energies in play, all sorts of things going, and the Iono to 2 did its job, because I was not able to draw out of the Iono to 2, which allowed me to scrape by in that game 1. In the game 2, again, that very similar turn 2 board was obtained, or turn 1 board rather, where we got the Raging Bolt in the active with an energy. So on his turn 2, he was able to take out a Dreepy. I think I had a Dreepy with an energy, and then I had a board state like this. Dreepy got knocked out, and I actually just put together a very, very strong turn where I got Candy, Zard, Infernal Rain, putting energy on the Dreepy there, and then also got Stamp and Counter Catcher. And I mean, this is just outrageous to an extent. I got the Unfair Stamp and then Counter Catcher on the Teal Mask for a KO, so Jose was left in a board state like this off of the Unfair Stamp, so having 2 cards in hand, no Terra. And Jose didn't really draw out of it, so allowed me to really just run through with the Charizard and pick up that one without too much hassle. So at this point, I am 3-0, feeling pretty good. Round 4, I run into Piper, who it says is American, but lives in Toronto right now, so it's one of my locals. So I know that Piper typically plays Gardevoir, so I was feeling pretty good about this one going in. Again, this matchup is pretty favored, but what I didn't know was that Piper was playing the TM Evo version of Gardevoir, and this deck is a lot more dangerous than the Brent version. So this version of the deck has the ability to make Gardevoirs under item lock a lot more consistently. And as a Bidoof deck where your primary game plan is really just slowing them down, this makes your job a little bit tougher. Going into game 1, I also didn't know this, so I was prepared to use my regular Bidoof game plan, since against the Brent Gardevoir, that's typically what you're going to go for, but wasn't nearly as effective as I would have liked. So game 1 is actually quite interesting, where Piper is actually getting Bidooed and is just essentially just drawing Bidooing me back. So I got my Bidoof going here. Piper's got her Bidoof going there. It has a Kirlia on the bench and a Rowletts on the bench, and I think a Monkey Dory that didn't have a Dark Energy. So has something like this, and I got to a board state where I had a Charmander and a Dracloak, and then I got a Monkey Dory down with a Luminous. So I was feeling pretty good about my chances here. My Bidoof had 10. Actually, I think my Bidoof had 20, because yeah, this is what happened. I had the Bidoof had 20, the Bidoof had 10. I also was able to make the Charmeleon, and then I had a very, very nice hand where I had the boss here, and I had a few other cards, and I was feeling really strong about my spot. I had the Charizard. The Charizard got made. I had the Infernal Rain. I think maybe I had another Dreepy here as well. So looking in the spot, you're thinking, oh, this is a TM Evo version of Guardy. It has 1 rare candy. Knocking out this Kirlia here looks really strong. I get to Adrenabrain, take a knockout here, take a 2 prize lead, and I was feeling really strong about my spot. So I went ahead and bossed the Kirlia. Again, Piper was just, draw Bidooing, so I felt like Piper's hand was fairly weak. So I used Adrenabrain to take the KO here on the Bidoof, went up a prize, knocked out the Kirlia with Burning Darkness to go up 2 prizes. But Piper actually did have the 1 copy of Rare Candy with the Gardevoir this turn, so good read on Piper not evolving into the Gardevoir, right? Could have evolved the Kirlia into Gardevoir, but wasn't a super strong reason to do it. So Piper just kind of held off a little bit. And so from my perspective, if I waited a little bit longer, I would have been able to maybe save my boss, would have been able to go for a 2 prize Phantom Dive and just knock out like Ralts plus Bidoof with the Phantom Dive. Then I would have been able to save my boss, keep my Charizard on the bench where it's a little bit safer. From here, I'm up 2 prizes, but things started to go downhill pretty quickly. With board states like this, what you can often see happen is that the opponent can go like Counter Catcher on something without energies, and then Screamtails and picks off the Dracloak. That's exactly what happened, and I wasn't able to find a way to move the Dreepy, so from there I got pretty quickly run over. Piper was able to get back into the trade. Something you actually might notice about her list as well is that she wasn't actually playing a copy of Drifloon. And had I known this going into the match, of course, would have played it much differently, but this is actually a huge advantage for my deck because, there's no way to one-shot Charizard. I was playing around the threat of a Drifloon because 95% of Gardevoirs are going to play Drifloon, but in this case, Piper actually didn't have a way to one-shot my Charizard, which made my Charizard even stronger of a threat than it normally would be. So this Screamtail trapping kind of game plan was very, very effective, and actually we got into a late game board state where I think it was something like this. I think my Monkey was knocked out at this point. Piper was on 3 prize cards and the Dreepy was trapped in the active. And Piper had to knock out this Dreepy and then knock out what I promoted. So Piper actually had to stack a bunch of Adrenabrain damage onto the Charizard in order to actually get the KO with I believe a Screamtail with a Bravery Charm. So definitely had to kind of pick up on that, and the fact that there might not be a Drifloon going into the next game, but I actually did not pick up on that fact. So game 1, a little bit disappointing, took a little bit of a lead, wasn't able to close it out. Game 2, I'm able to really establish a similar board to game 1. But this time I'm just able to kind of put the pieces together a little bit quicker. I get, I think, 2 or maybe even 3 Dracloaks in play, and I get that early Charizard going. I think I used TM Evo this game, so no Bidoof action. Again, the Bidoof is not super strong against that TM Evo version of the Gardevoir, so I'm able to get to a board state, which is very strong, getting the double Dracloaks in play. I think at some point I also got the Monkey Dory in play. Piper was dead drawn for a little bit, so I was taking advantage of that. But Piper did top deck Secret Box and was able to kind of fight back into it. And I had a play here where I was on 4 prizes, Piper was on 2. I don't really exactly remember how that happened, but I got into a spot where like maybe couldn't take a prize card here or there, and then Piper had like the Scream Tail in the active with a bunch of damage, and the Clefairy on the bench. So I ended up going for this play, and it was a board state like this, like double Monkey Dory with Dark Energy was in play. And so I ended up going for this Counter Catcher and then Phantom Dive play. Oh, actually Piper was on 3 here. Yeah, Piper was on 3 here. And so I ended up going for this knockout play with the boss, knowing that like I go down to 1, if I go down to 2, potentially I whiff a boss and then have to go from 2 to 1. So I didn't knock out any Monkey Dories, and both these Monkey Dories had Dark Energies on them. So I actually let myself into a position where like Piper had a pretty small hand, hadn't been playing supporters, but had Piper been able to find her last Night Stretcher for a Clefairy plus Monkey Dark, then she would have been able to take her last 3 prize cards by using triple Adrenabrain to pick up a KO and then using Full Moon Rondo to pick up a KO. So retrospectively, I actually won this game, but maybe I should have taken out the Monkey Dory or even the Gardevoir. And so definitely good learning from that game. Game 3 was a nightmare for me. Piper was able to establish this board state on turn 2 of the game. And let me tell you, when this happens, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to win. So I was able to at least get to an endgame board state where I had like went Unfair Stamp and knocked out the Clefairy using my Dragapult. Piper only had 1 Night Stretcher left at that point because Piper's list is only playing the 2 copies of Night Stretcher. And so I felt pretty good. I was going to take the knockout on Clefairy. I had a nice 2-turn plan to win, but the Dragapult was very vulnerable to a Clefairy, and Piper did draw into the Night Stretcher off of the Unfair Stamp to get the Clefairy back, and then was able to close it out. So I'm sitting at 3-1 now, still feeling pretty good. It's a tough loss. And the Gardevoir Fest continued to come. I played against another Gardevoir in round 5, played against Luke. Luke was also playing, I believe, the Brent 60. Yes, this is the Brent 60. This one was not super close. Game 1 was actually very, very close. Luke got into a board position where he was actually 10 damage away from winning. I had gotten into a very similar position where I was getting Scream Tail trapped, and then I ended up in a board state where he actually could have won game 1, but he mismanaged his Adrenabrain damage by 10 damage, so he wasn't able to move the full 30 onto my Charizard to get the Balloon Blast KO, because what he had to do was he had to knock out my active, then I had to promote the Charizard, then he would have had to get Turo and then Monkey Dory number 3, move the 30, and then Balloon Blast, but he wasn't able to get that extra 10 damage, so he wasn't able to one-shot my Charizard, which put me in the spot to just response and pick up the game. Game 2, I was able to get that Hawlucha Phantom Dive play to knock out both Kirlia and Ralts. Of course, when that happens, you are almost always going to win, and I was able to pick that one up. So now sitting at 4-1, played against Rolando in round 6. Rolando had a very, very beautiful Gardevoir deck with the Call of Legends Psychic and Dark Energies, so it was a very shiny game between the two of us. This game was pretty similar to my round 2, where again, this is the Brent 60. Rolando was not able to find Candy Gardevoir for quite a few turns in the second game, so I was able to pick that one up. Game 1 actually was pretty tight, and I got into a little bit of trouble again from like Iono, Scream Tail type of things. I really got to stop benching too many Pokemon here. It's actually very close to the Brent 60. There's actually a second Scream Tail, so it's not the exact 60, but yeah, I got Iono with Scream Tail trapped, and there was, a few turns where I was recon directing, and I needed to take 2 prizes, but I couldn't put a 2-prizer in the active, and so I was able to find a boss off of the Iono, but I needed to find the energy from my Phantom Dive as well, I believe, to take the 2 prize KO. Or maybe it was the energy on a Charizard. I think I maybe retreated Charizard that game, and so I was holding on to the boss. And I was just essentially praying to not get Iono'd, and luckily the Iono did not come, so I was able to find Burning Darkness to knock out the Gardevoir game 1. And then again game 2, she was not able to put together a Gardevoir very easily, so I was able to pick up the game 2 there. Moving on to round 7, this is against Sebastian Lashman, playing the Pidgeot Dragapult deck. So definitely a very, very interesting list. The 1-1-2 Pidgeot line seems inconsistent, but it felt surprisingly consistent in practice. So game 1, I had a very, very interesting board where turn 1 I opened a hand like this, and I had like a Poffin, and I had a Dreepy in the active, had Dreepy on the bench, and then I like Poffined, and I got out Bidoof Charmander, anticipating to go into a Bidoof War. But I had the Arven, I was going to grab Rescue Board, but I actually top decked an Energy, and I was thinking, okay, well, Sebastian had like a 3-card hand. Okay, let me import this deck right here. Had a 3-card hand, and I was feeling, pretty confident that there weren't any items I needed to block. Typically when you're going to use Itchy Pollen, you're thinking about what items you want to block. So I was staring down a board like this. Sebastian had a 3-card hand. I'm thinking, okay, you know what? There's not too many things I need to block. So instead of using the Rescue Board and getting into the Itchy Pollen, I decided to go for the TM Evo. So I made myself 2 Draclo because I felt like I was in a very strong spot. Pretty likely to get Iono'd here. Actually, I think... yeah, not 2 Draclos, would have been Dracloak Charmeleon. But, make a pretty strong board here. Get to start drawing cards. And unfortunately, out of Sebastian's 3-card hand, he actually was just holding Candy Pidgeot, which I felt was pretty unfortunate. So typically, they're not going to be holding Candy Pidgeot, but this is a very long mirror, and I don't really have a way to knock out Pidgeot, so this Pidgeot gets to sit here all game, guaranteeing pieces like Boss, Attachments, Crispin, Penny, and so over the course of the game, Sebastian was just able to generate enough of an advantage with the Pidgeot to pull game 1. Game 2, Sebastian was not able to really set up, so I kind of just rolled him over. I wasn't able to establish the Pidgeot. I was able to get Dragapult Boss pretty early into the game, so he scooped it up to hopefully give us enough time to game 3. But game 3, I did not have enough time to conclude. I got into a pretty close spot to win. I was up 6-2 by the end of turn 3. He was in a spot to Blood Moon my only Dragapult, and so we were talking over, we had made a gentleman's agreement, we're thinking about like who was in an advantageous position. He thought he was in an advantageous position, I thought I was in an advantageous position, mostly due to the fact that the Blood Moon is pretty stuck in the active there. He didn't have a Pidgeot or anything set up, and if you look at his list, his only way to move the Blood Moon is this 1 copy of Penny. Even just looking positionally at the Penny, because we were open-handed, the Penny was going to be at the bottom of the deck from an Iono, so I felt like I would have had enough time to reestablish a board. I was going to TM Evo to get out another Dracloak, and then was probably going to be able to Phantom Dive the Blood Moon Ursaluna for 200 and then pick it up with a second Phantom Dive. But he also felt like he was in a pretty good spot, just because, this Dragapult Pidgeot deck is typically going to be favored into Dragapult Charizard. So we both had our different opinions on that. Perfectly respectable. Ended up tying that one, so was now sitting at 5-1-1. Round 8, played against a local player, Sergio, who has been playing Gholdengo pretty consistently recently. I actually had talked to him about his Gholdengo list pretty recently, so I knew roughly what was in it. I knew it was a straight Gholdengo list, no like super crazy tricks outside of the Iron Bundle, which I knew was in the deck, so expecting a pretty tough match. This is probably my worst matchup outside of like just straight Melodic and Walls. So I was feeling a little bit nervous going into this one. I'm at 5-1-1 at this point, so my tournament life is on the line. So luckily, Sergio game 1 does not get a super strong start. I win the coin flip, so he has to go first. Doesn't get a Buddy Poffin, and I'm able to Bidoof lock him out for a while. The game goes on quite a while, but he has a very slow start. He also ends up prizing a couple of energies for the eSearch Pro, so isn't able to pick up a KO after using the E-Search Pro, I'm able to pull off the double Phantom Dive line where you put 200 on one Gholdengo and then 60 onto the other Gholdengo, and then was able to use a Gust effect to bring up the other one, and then was able to take that 4-prize turn, just like that. I think he also prized his Monkey Dory, which didn't help, and then you go Phantom Dive, take the 4 there. So game 1 was able to close that one out. Game 2 was getting into a really rough spot. I had my first Phantom Dive, and he was able to Turo his Dragapult, or Turo his Gholdengo rather. Typically when a Gholdengo gets Turoed, you're going to be very far behind in the prize trade. You essentially lose a full attack, and Gholdengo can stream KOs pretty consistently. So he's able to Turo and take a KO, but I was actually able to get into my, I believe, had like a board like that. And I was actually able to get into my Charizard. He was on 3 prizes, and I got into the Stamp and was able to Stamp and knock out a Gholdengo. He was not able to put together the pieces to get a response KO on my Charizard, which is actually pretty surprising because Gholdengo normally does find the response. That's actually one of the problems with this straight Gholdengo deck. It doesn't have the Dracloak or any other external factors to, draw extra cards. It has the extra copy or 2 of Cypher, but it doesn't have extra ways to draw cards. So out of the Stamp, wasn't able to put the pieces together. I was able to stream 2 Burning Darkness attacks together, and from there was able to pick it up. So after day 1, sitting at a nice and clean 6-1-1 record. I know that day 2 I had to go 3-0-1 for asymmetrical top cut, so it's an uphill battle, but I'm feeling pretty optimistic. I've been there, done it before. Round 9, play against Ruben, a fantastic player from Mexico. Was very kind as well. We had a nice set, but he was able to kind of just run me over. I think the set lasted 15-20 minutes. He really just got the Jolting charge, did everything his deck wants to do, and I wasn't able to find any Dracloaks on turn 2 of game 1, so went down 4 prize cards there, and I was almost able to make a comeback with the Phantom Dive, trying to go for like a 6 prize Phantom Dive, because he had, I think, overhedged a little bit on the Charizard, so what he had done, which allowed me to potentially take a 6 prize Phantom Dive, was benching both of the Joltiks. So just trying to, make sure you get a Galvantula in play, wanting to get that second Joltik down. But he had the Iron Hands with the Bravery Charm, but also had, the rest of the board set up something like this. So I actually went for a Phantom Dive line where I was putting like 200 on here, and then I went like 2, and then I went like 2, and then put like the other 2 here, just looking to break the shield, and then was looking for on the following turn Phantom Dive and pick up the knockout. Off the, I think it was a Stamp, it might have been an Iono, but off of the Iono, he was able to find the boss. He was already up 4 prizes, was able to actually just take 6 prize cards with the Iron Hands. Had a Badoo or something laying around. I don't know if it was a Badoo. You typically don't want a Badoo in this matchup, but I had like a Dracloak or something laying around as a Amp You Very Much target. So he was able to pick up the first game. The second game was a complete nightmare. I did not make a single stage 2. He was just able to win in 3 attacks with the Iron Hands. Sometimes if you don't find Dracloaks, especially into a very aggressive deck with Iron Hands, sometimes you're just not going to win that one. So wasn't able to put it together. So I'm sitting at 6-1, feeling a little sad at this point. I'm out of top cut contention, but I know that my resistance, my tiebreakers are really strong, because Piper at this point was like 8-0-1 or something, or maybe 7-0-2. And my round 1 opponent Ian had a very strong showing, went into day 2 at 5-1-2, I think picked up a win, so a 6-1-2, so I'm feeling optimistic. If I win all my games out, I have a chance to bubble into 16. And so I play against Scotty round 10 in the Dragapult Mirror. This one was a little egregious for me. I got turn 3 Phantom Dive with Boss, I think twice actually, it might have been both games. And Dragapult Mirror does kind of just go like that sometimes. The player who is able to put those pieces together has a good time. I'm playing the TM Evo, so sometimes I'm just able to get my Dracloaks on board a little bit quicker than they are. So I was able to kind of just run through both of those games. There was one game where I was able to get a 4-prize Phantom Dive with just the 6 damage counters. So there was a Fez with 200, a Badoo with 10, and then a Dreepy with, I believe, 40. And I was able to put 3 on the Dreepy, 2 on the Badoo, 1 on the Fez and Dippity to pick up a 4-prize Phantom Dive. Sometimes just going Countercatcher or Boss on the Fez and Dippity and swinging at it for 200 is a nice little bailout when you know you're playing against one of these Dragapult versions that doesn't play a card like Turo or Penny. It allows you to stay behind on the prize trade for that turn and keep your Countercatcher available to put a big multi-prize KO turn to finish the game. So picked up the win there, and then on the following round played against another straight Dragapult, this time with, well, it's actually a very similar deck, but also with the inclusion of the Gravity Gemstone, which was very cool. Micah wasn't really drawing super hot either. I mean, a lot of that is just the Dragapult mirror. I was able to make the Dragapult first, was able to find Boss and clear out 2 Dracloaks in one of the 2 games. Again, kind of shout out to the TM Evo there, because the TM Evo allows you to get set up very, very quickly. Like if you're looking at what Badoo actually does in this matchup, you're really only shutting out Ultra Ball. Poffin, you shut off if they haven't got basics into play, but once they have basics into play, they can only use Ultra Ball, right? They're not going to use Countercatcher or Poffin or Night Stretcher or Switch or Unfair Stamp, so Badoo and the opponent actually doesn't do all that much. I'd rather just make my own Dracloaks a little bit quicker, and so having the TM Evo there was very, very impactful. So I'm sitting at 8-2-1 at this point, going into my final round, and Micah was telling me that I had hit his friend Nate, and so we had a nice conversation after. Again, very, very nice opponent. So hit his friend, so of course not going to tell me what his friend's playing, and Nate flips over a Dino. So as soon as they flip over a Dino, I'm feeling pretty happy. You know, Hydreigon, just pretty good matchup for a Dragapult deck. The item lock is very, very impactful. Into a deck like this, you are also shutting off Rare Candy in addition to Ultra Ball, and the inherent draw engine in this deck is a little bit weaker. Maybe not weaker, but a little bit harder to set up. Once it gets rolling, you know, the Pidgeot and the Zoroark are very, very strong, but it can be difficult to get them going. So game 1, I am able to make a Dragapult pretty quickly, but I can't get the second energy on Dragapult, so I actually went Boss and Jet Headbutt the only Dino in play to put him pretty far back, and he was able to establish double Zoroark and a Pidgeot, so I was feeling a little bit scared. You know, that's a lot that I'm staring down, but at this point, by the time he was able to get a Hydreigon up, I was up, I believe, 3 prize cards, and I was able to put together a 2-turn play where I was able to double Phantom Dive to pick up the last 3 prize cards. So was able to kind of put the pieces together there. Of course, the Pidgeot, once it becomes online, is very, very scary, but it's pretty tough to get the Pidgeot online in good speed. You can also see that his deck only played the 1 copy of Boss, which I believe was a pretty limiting factor from his perspective to close out his prize trade. Game 2 was able to get the Badoo in the active on turn 1. Was Badooing, took about 4 turns where he was only going draw Badoo back and then draw Arven, but couldn't use the TM Evo because he didn't have an energy in hand. So I was able to get set up first, was able to clear the Dino and Zweilious off the board using the combination of Hawlucha plus Phantom Dive to knock out Dino plus Zweilious, and was able to take a pretty big lead. There was one turn that made it a little bit interesting. I got hit with the Iono Clefairy combo. I forgot that this deck plays Counter Gain and Clefairy, so was able to knock out my Dragapult, put me on a 3-card hand, but luckily with my combination of a Recon Directive and having the Charmander in play, I needed to find either Dragapult Energy or Candy Charizard, and I was able to put together the Candy Charizard to get the knockout on the Clefairy. So I was able to go down to 1 prize card, and at that point the game was pretty much over. And he was looking to, make a last hurrah play just kind of for fun. The game was pretty much already over at that point, but he actually realized that both of his Hydreigons were prized, which is pretty unlucky actually. He'd already taken 2 prize cards with the Clefairy, but by the time he was able to make a Hydreigon, it would have been a little bit too late. So after that, I finished 9-1. I get very, very fortunate with my tiebreakers. I'm able to finish 15th. There's only, I believe, 2 people at my record, including myself, that made it. Yeah, me and Richard. So I'm feeling very, very fortunate. Shout out to my tiebreakers, Sebastian and Piper, both made top cut, was able to boost my resistance up to 67%, get me in there, and secure a pretty good placement for me. So again, very, very happy with the Dragapult Charizard deck. Going to be looking to continue playing it into NAIC. And thank you guys for watching. If you guys are interested in more content like this, feel free to drop a comment, let me know. I'm also going to be holding a class on the Dragapult Charizard deck on Metafy. So if you are interested in checking out more content on this deck and going a little bit more in depth on the specific matchups, the different list considerations going into NAIC, how to play that Marnie's Grimmsnarl matchup that everyone is so worried about, feel free to take a look. I will drop the link to that in the description. And thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys then.